You know, every city has its official story, right? The one you can find on maps and in history books. But what about the other story? The one that's told in whispers, in dreams, and the actual feeling you get walking down its streets. Today, we're going to dive into how to read a city's soul, not just its blueprints.
Just look at this photograph from São Paulo. It's absolutely incredible. On one side, you have the Paraisópolis favela, this incredibly dense community of homes. And on the other, literally right next door, a luxury apartment building with private tennis courts and swimming pools for every balcony. A single wall. That's all that separates these two completely different realities. This isn't just a picture of inequality. This is the story of a city kind of at war with itself.
So how do we get beyond just the numbers and the buildings to really understand the human experience going on here? How do we get a feel for the hopes, the fears, the everyday grind of the people who call this city home? Well, official records aren't going to tell us that. We've got to look somewhere else.
And this, right here, is where things start to get really interesting. Historians have begun turning to some pretty new and unconventional sources to tell a much richer, more human story of the past.
I mean, think about it. Traditional history, it's great at telling us what happened and where it happened. It gives us, like, the skeleton of the past, but it totally misses the city's pulse, the collective mood, the anxieties, the unspoken rules that actually guided people's lives.
So to capture that pulse, we can turn to this field called the history of mentalities. And what's so fascinating here is this idea of slowness. Because while cities and technology can change super fast, our mindsets, our really deep-seated beliefs and attitudes, they change much more slowly. People might start driving cars, but they can still have the mentality of the horse and buggy era.
Okay, so how in the world do you study something as slippery as a mentality? Well, you look for it in the places people express themselves the most freely, not just in some stuffy official report, but in the stories they told each other, the art they made, the letters they wrote. And for what we're doing today, we're going to focus on one of the richest sources of all, literature. And this quote just illustrates the why perfectly. The psychologist Lev Vygotsky argued that art isn't just some individual act of genius. No, he said it's the social in us, but given a physical form. A novel, a painting, a song, these aren't just for entertainment. They're basically time capsules where a society's collective feelings get captured and put on display for us to study, even centuries later. All right, let's put this idea to the test with a real-world example. We're heading back to São Paulo to trace the absolutely dizzying transformation of one of its most famous streets, Avenida Paulista.
So get this. In less than a century, Avenida Paulista goes from being this quiet, super elite residential street to the crazy, bustling financial core of one of the biggest cities on the planet. First, it's just a dream for the super rich. Then the coffee barons build these insane mansions. But by the 50s, the pressure to modernize kicks in. And bam! By the 70s, it's a canyon of skyscrapers.
Let's actually watch this happen. Here's the street at its inauguration in 1891. It's almost unrecognizable, isn't it? It's just a wide, unpaved road. Looks more like a country lane, made for horse-drawn carriages and quiet walks. This is São Paulo before the explosion. Now, let's jump forward just a couple of decades to 1910. Okay, now we can see the vision taking shape. The avenue is lined with these huge, grand mansions of the coffee elite, surrounded by massive gardens. This is the picture of a city built on coffee money, trying to look like it belongs in Europe. Now, look at 1952. This is that moment of transition. The old world and the new are literally standing side by side. You can see the first skyscrapers starting to just shoulder their way in, dwarfing the old mansions. You can almost feel the tension in the photograph, can't you? The past versus the future.
And by 1976, the transformation is total. It's complete. The mansions, they're gone, replaced by banks and giant office buildings. The street is just a river of cars. The city's entire identity has shifted from agriculture to a powerhouse of modern finance. So the question is, what did that feel like for the people who actually lived through it?
Well, to answer that, we're going to use one of those unconventional sources we talked about. We are going to open a book.
The book is called Éramos Seis, which means we were six, and it was published in 1943, right in the thick of all this crazy change. It tells the story of a middle-class family, the Lemos family, just trying to hold on and find their footing as their entire city transforms around them. And this slide, wow, this is just perfect. On the left, you've got one of those grand old mansions that inspired the setting of the novel. And on the right, what's standing there today? A modern restaurant.
The entire story of the novel about memory and change and loss, it's all captured right here in these two photos.
The Lemos family is basically a perfect little model of the entire city. Each family member represents a different way of dealing with modernity. We've got Lola, the traditional mom, just trying to hold everything together. Alfredo, the rebel son, is drawn to new political ideas. Julinho is the ambitious one, chasing new money. And Isabel, the daughter, is pushing back against the old traditional roles. Every single argument at their dinner table is like a bigger debate happening all across São Paulo.
Through these characters, the author just nails the new feeling of the city. This quote is so telling. It shows that shift from a slow, community-based life to the anonymous, frantic rush of a modern metropolis. That feeling of being surrounded by millions of people but feeling utterly alone. A map could never, ever describe that.
So here's the crucial point. It's this direct parallel. The families struggle to afford their house. That mirrors the city's real estate boom. The kids choosing new kinds of jobs, like one becoming an auto mechanic, that reflects the rise of industry. And kind of tragically, as the family slowly drifts apart, it reflects how the old social fabric of São Paulo is being torn down and replaced by something new, and maybe a little more impersonal.
So, what does all this mean? What can a fictional, made-up story really tell us about actual history?
This is really the key takeaway. A novel like Éramos Seis isn't valuable because it's a perfectly accurate, factual account. We don't read it for dates and names. We read it for what it reveals. It's not a mirror. It's more like an X-ray. It shows you what's going on underneath the surface.
Here's kind of how it works. An author doesn't just record what happened. They tap into the collective consciousness of their time. They imagine the dreams people didn't dare say out loud, the fears they kept to themselves, the different lives they might have lived. And by giving life to all these possibilities, the novel shows us the hidden tensions of its era. It tells the story of what could have been, which tells us so much about what was.
And in the end, the story of the Lemos family gives us something totally priceless: the emotional texture of the past. It lets us feel the anxiety of a family watching their entire world disappear. And it lets us understand both the excitement and the terror of living through that kind of profound change. That is a kind of historical truth that no map or government report can ever give you. So the next time you walk through your own town or city, try to look past just the buildings and the street signs. Think about the stories that have soaked into the pavement, the ghosts of old arguments, the echoes of forgotten dreams. What stories are hidden in your city's streets?